Hey everybody, I'm back. I am just an insignificant man here to share my thoughts. So let's get started. Here we go. Angels, Ra, and Emmanuel. What do they all have in common? Why am I bringing them up? Why am I trying to get everybody thinking about them? For every Christian out there, you need to be thinking about this stuff. You need to be asking questions. If something doesn't settle with you, if a question doesn't seem to be fully answered, you have every right to ask, and you should ask. The hardest thing I think we have, in a Christian society, especially at churches, whatever church you go to, something doesn't add up. You ask a question, and you're kind of made to feel dumb, which I have had a lot of background in being made to feel dumb. So I am not even close to the smartest man on the planet. I am just smart enough to know that I should probably keep my mouth shut most of the time. But unless it's really important, which is why I'm talking to everybody now, is why I'm doing this, because I feel this is really important. And our society has everybody just working, going, kids, sports, you name it, clubs, and we're made to be so busy trying to make that dollar, trying to keep things alive for our family, provide for everything, that we don't have time to ourselves. We don't have the time to talk, so we make it in church on Sundays, and we just kind of go through the motions and blah, blah, blah. We believe everything they say, nod, smile, and there you go. But if we really had time to stop and think, we'd raise our hand and be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, how do you know this? Well, how do we know anything? It's from the texts of the past. How accurate are those texts, and who decided these texts were okay and who decided no? So, like when they started forming the Bible, what books and letters to keep in, out of the Old Testament, the New Testament. You have so many books from the Old Testament that Christians don't even know about. So, a little bit about my background is I grew up in the church, an evangelical church, and it was great. My father was a pastor, and he still is the most amazing person that's been in my life to this day. The amount of good he did for the people that he was serving still blows me away, and I wish I could be more like that every day. So I guess here I am trying to speak my mind, and this is how I'm trying to serve, is getting this information out. So the Christian church, then you have the divide of the Catholics, and what exactly is the difference between the two? I don't know if anybody's ever explained it to you. There's a huge divide. And like I've mentioned in previous talks, Martin Luther was really the big divide where it started, separating Protestants and Catholics. The Catholics believe that the papacy, or I guess the Holy Papacy, I'm not quite sure how they refer to it, but it all stems from Peter. So Peter, on this rock I will build my church, Petros, that whole deal. When Jesus is only referred to himself as the cornerstone, so I don't understand where all of a sudden Peter became the rock that his church was going to be built. And if you read the Talmud of Jmmanuel, you will be very interested to see what he actually says about Peter, which is sad but amazing to finally get the truth. So and there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of ceremony held up in the Catholic Church. Some of the similarities are the communion. So they still both practice communion. The Catholic Church practices slightly different. They still keep Jesus on the cross because they want to focus on him dying. The Protestants focus on an empty cross because we're more about the resurrection, and the little things like this, as well as confession. Protestants do not believe in confessing yourself to a priest, confessing your sins to a priest. Catholics do, so that's just some of the differences. And it was a huge divide, enough to kill over, label people under the label of heresy, burn them at the stake, and there you go. So, not to say that the Protestants were any better, because they were known to throw Catholics out the windows of high towers. So there you go. They got blood on both sides, and we just don't want to get along because this is so important that we're willing to kill for this. Completely missing the whole message saying, Emmanuel telling everybody, stop killing each other. I mean, for crying out loud, just love each other, love your neighbor as yourself, learn to get along. And it kind of went the opposite direction. But time has passed, and things have finally worked its way to where they are today. So who is deciding on what books to put into the Bible? I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it was a big deal, especially when it comes to the book of Enoch. Well, why would you throw out the book of Enoch? Doesn't the Bible, the Old Testament, mention Enoch? He was the grandfather of Noah, and he was said to have been taken up and never died on earth, but he ascended before he even died, and that was during the time of the Nephilim and the giants. And so everybody's curious about that. Like all these fallen angels are making these giants, and the giants are becoming cannibals. And it was kind of an experiment gone wrong by the farmers, I guess you'd say. Sins were being committed and all sorts of stuff. So there was a flood that was brought on to wipe us all off the face of the earth and have a fresh start. So there you go. Enoch. He was asked to be the mediator between God and these fallen angels. And this book is amazing. He has many, I think 3 prophecies, I believe. Not 100% sure, just trying to think off the top of my head, which are amazing. Just like the ones in the Old Testament were describing animals, using animals to describe groups of people. And these prophecies are amazing. These visions he has are amazing. And he describes perfectly through the events, through King David, through Jesus, and past. And there's a couple different ones too. And then it goes into great detail of the fallen angels, calls them by name. It goes into detail on the certain types of sins that each angel brought to man. So it's very interesting. If no one's ever read that book, I'd encourage you to read that book as well. Ezekiel, from what I understand, was another book they almost didn't include in the Bible. So if you ever read Ezekiel, it is crazy. The funny thing is nowadays, back then, just after AD, they had no concept of flying machines. They didn't know about rocket engines. They didn't know about lift, created by the shape of the wing, the design, helicopters, flying saucers, you name it, anti-gravity. They didn't know about any of that stuff. Well, we have that information nowadays, and we read this stuff, and we see a completely different picture. We see technology, and when you don't know about it, you're going to fear it. So it's understandable. They'll try to hide the truth and keep that out because it's harder to convince people if you have stuff that's in there that's just kind of out of this world. So again, just like the Talmud of Jmmanuel, call it what you want, convincing people, trying to share. Back then, they wanted to convince people because once you convince people, you pull them in under your reign and you have the power over them like the whole Catholic Church, and they gain power, tell them you have to confess their sins, pay them money to have those sins forgiven, and there you go. You can control the whole society with religion. Put people in guilt, tell them they have to believe in things they don't see, and call it faith, manipulating Emmanuel's words and teachings, and there you go. So we have angels. We have a lot of accounts in angels in the Bible alone. When I was a kid, I loved Star Wars, right? Who didn't love Star Wars? Very few people. But when my dad read me the passage in Genesis where Adam and Eve sinned, they were removed from the garden, and God placed angels around the tree of eternal life with swords of fire. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's just crazy. That sounds like a lightsaber. Star Wars comes out, I watch the movie, and I see these swords, laser swords. I'm like, wow, that kind of sounds like technology to me. I always thought that was the most amazing thing. And then we have accounts of Gabriel talking to Daniel many times, and even Gabriel goes into account of him and Michael are in agreement on how to handle a certain situation going on at the time. So this tells me 2 things. One, that Michael and Gabriel are actively working in our reality to, they seem very powerful because he's floating above the river. He scared everybody else off, but he had Daniel stay, and he's telling him what's going on and why he was 21 days late, something like that, because he'd spent the last 21 days trying to convince the Persian king at the time of something, that he needed to do something, and I don't presume to know how he's going about it, but I'm guessing it has to do with influence him in a way without breaching free will. So he goes into detail, and he's actively working on it, him and Michael together, but it also tells me that not all the angels agree on how to handle things. So, we think of them as these perfect beings. Well, what if there's no such thing as perfection? What if perfection is just a perspective to each individual? Up to, how old are these angels? What is perfection to them? What is perfection to us? How would we know anything about perfection with our short little lives? So right there, it's, Daniel has a little one-on-one with Gabriel, and he refers to Michael as the long-suffering, which I think is very interesting, and why he would be labeled that. I mean, these angels have to be, by our time frame, they have to be billions of years old. Well, what exactly is long-suffering to a being that is that old? So, I don't know. It's pretty interesting. So those are the questions I raise. But it's got me asking questions. Now, Daniel got to have a one-on-one with an angel. I've always thought that was so amazing. Like, man, what I wouldn't give to just like, hey, Gabriel, can you come down and hang out with me at my house for a couple days? Because I got a lot of questions I want to ask you. And just have him sit down and say, sure, I'll answer you, whatever question you have to the best of my ability. And I'm like, all right, here we go. First of all, who killed JFK? And so on and so forth. I'd have so many questions. I think everybody would have a lot of questions. Second question would be, where do you guys live? Like, we have all these accounts of angels, angels at the tomb, Jesus' resurrection, angels here, angels there. And where do these beings live? Well, if they're not living on Earth, then by our definitions, our standards these days, they are technically aliens. So I always thought that was so bizarre that these UFOs and aliens, and I understand it now. It's a psyops by the government and people that do know the truth, trying to hide the truth and convince the public that they don't exist. And best way to do that, you make people feel stupid. So you call them aliens, and you make them these hideous gray creatures that are all out to do evil, blah, blah, blah. Well, aren't the angels technically considered aliens? So they're extraterrestrials. I mean, they're not from Earth. They're non-terrestrial. So why do we have a hang-up on believing in aliens, the alien and UFO phenomenon? Why do we? I think probably just because you don't want to be labeled as that gullible idiot that believes in aliens, and you get laughed at. It all goes back to elementary school. No one likes to get laughed at. It's embarrassing. But who's going to stand up and say, yes, I actually do? Think of me what you want, and I believe in aliens. Why do you believe in aliens? Because I believe Gabriel came down and talked to Daniel above the river, the Euphrates River. I can't remember right now, but which is funny. I spent a lot of time along the Euphrates River, and it's pretty awe-inspiring to think that you're standing on the same banks of so many things you've read about in history through the Bible and everything. It's pretty awesome. So, we believe in all these angels, and they're real: Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, Michael, and pretty much the House of El. We believe in them, but you start saying UFOs and aliens, and then you're just ridiculous. You're just off the wall loony. It'll check you into a loony bin. If you actually ever took the time to look into the UFO community, there are a lot of eyewitnesses and whistleblowers that have been telling their story for a long time, all the way back from the 80s, even 70s, and maybe even 50s. I think first accounts were recorded. And you look at them now, why didn't we believe them? Like, what reason do we have not to believe them? Like, is there any evidence why not to believe them? Like, why is it human instinct to say, nah, they're lying? So we automatically assume that people are lying before they're telling the truth. Well, why is it that way? Why can't we do the opposite? Why can't we believe they're telling the truth until we find out otherwise? I mean, that's how our justice system is set up. So why can't we believe everybody's innocent till proven guilty? So why don't we believe these people as soon as they come out and start talking about it? And then if we want to verify if they're telling the truth, why don't we look into like what they have to gain from this? If people are just making tons of money by becoming like a celebrity figure and they're just rolling in dough and just elaborating on all these stories, and when they tell the stories over and over, there's inconsistencies and they aren't telling the same thing. Their stories aren't lining up anymore. I mean, these are just like basic deductive skills that every detective in America uses. They ask them over and over to tell them the story. Is there any discrepancies? Well, these people don't have any discrepancies in their story because it's burned into their brain. So whatever they think they saw, they're trying to tell it. I mean, because there's no way to prove it other than word of mouth. Now, what really happened, is that what they were seeing? Can things mess with our mind? Well, I think that little scenario with Gabriel and Daniel is a great example of yes, it can. He put Gabriel inside of fear, and the people that were with Daniel, they didn't see anything. Only Daniel saw Gabriel, and he wasn't afraid. And so, or as afraid, I guess you'd say. And then you have John in the book of Revelation. I mean, how amazing is this? We have a whole book of Revelation where he was escorted to a room, 12 thrones surrounding a main throne and an altar, and all the beings sitting on these thrones have crowns, and the altar is surrounded, no, the throne is surrounded by the four cherubim, I guess we'd call them, with the four different heads and wings and eyes all over their bodies, even under their wings. Anytime they would say something, the individuals with crowns would get on their knees, set their crowns down, and give praise to God. Amazing. And this being is going around giving John a tour, telling him things that have to pass, have to come. So where do all these people live? Well, they don't live on Earth, so by definition, they'd be considered aliens too. This day and age, I think our concept of alien life has to change, because I don't consider Gabriel, Michael, and the other angels and the individuals that Apostle John saw as aliens. They're not gray aliens that are out to abduct people and shove probes in every orifice in the human body. No, they're angels. They're what we call angels because they're misunderstood. We don't know. They're surrounded by light. And so who exactly are these people? Well, the amazing thing is we have been told. I really do believe we have been told, and the channeling sessions from the Law of One, the raw material for the group of 3 people, transcribed their cassette recordings, and they actually get to live what I dreamed about. I dreamed about interviewing the angel Gabriel till I was blue in the face, answered every question, everything I wanted to know. These people actually came across that situation. This is a group of beings. They call themselves Ra. They are one. They are all connected mentally, telepathically. And so their minds are like one giant internet. And their consciousness is so high, they are connected through their brain, their minds and thoughts at every moment of existence. So when you are sharing everybody's thoughts and knowledge and abilities, you are a group. You are part of that group. I mean, it's amazing. So the Raw group approaches these 3 individuals and pretty much tells them we are here to spread the Law of One, but we will answer any question we can as long as it doesn't interfere with your time-space continuum in your future. So the questions they were asking, he got into it mainly because he wanted to know about the UFO phenomenon and everything that was going on with it. What he got from it, and I'm talking about the questionnaire, what he got from it was way more than he bargained for. I mean, it is amazing what information he got. And what makes this hard, because this is going to be hard to hear, no matter if you're Protestant Christian, Catholic Christian, Jewish, Islam, Mormon, Hindu, whatever, they're trying to spread the message of the law of one. And you're asking yourself, well, what is the law of one? You come from the Christian point of view, you have the Holy Trinity. So they're, God, Father, and Holy Spirit. Well, what they're saying is that is false, and that is a half-truth that has crept in, and that is what they're trying to correct. So what they're trying to tell everybody is that under creation, there is nothing else, because it's infinite. And they refer to the Creator as the one infinite Creator. I mean, that's a great label. I always had an issue with God's plural, capital G, lowercase g. Well, who the heck are you talking about? Well, gods aren't we just talking about then like aliens of different races out there in the stars? Could be true. Well, now what makes our God capital G, and how is he different than someone else's God? Well, he's more powerful. Okay, so he's more powerful. Well, is he the creator? I don't know. Is he the creator? So is the individual we call God, is he the creator? I think you'd be surprised in the answer. But as far as the creator goes, what we know, and if you want to compare what they talk about in the law of one, is there is a difference between who we call God and the one they call the one infinite creator. But there are some overlays where things were right on, so there's truth being spread, but then, like I said, there's that half-truth that sneaks in there, and the best lie you can ever tell is a half-lie. Even in my military background and our SEER training, I don't know if anybody's ever gone through that or heard of SEER training. You have to go through hostage scenarios, so you have to know how to deal with the stress and them interrogating you. So the best way to do it is half-truths, because you can remember the truthful part because it's the truth, but then you slide a slight little lie in there. So something you might need to not give away the position of your friends still out there on the battlefield. So I mean, our government even knows this, and it's like the main practice. Our media knows this. It's their main practice. You put half-truths out there. So this is a little half-truth that got in there, and they're trying to show us and teach us that there is one creation, one infinite creator, and as far as they know, he is infinite, which means at the center of all light, the center of everything created, there is the one infinite creator, and how he began, they don't know where he came from, but he was just there. So they refer to as infinity. So there's always been infinity. Infinity was there, and infinity became aware. That was the first step. So out of free will, infinity wanted to learn. So he decided to become, he could have become anything, but infinity decided to become love. And that's why when Jesus refers to God as love, he might have been misquoted, or the text might have been changed. According to the Talmud of Jmmanuel, Jesus refers to creation, and he says there is a difference between who we call God, who created the human races, and creation, who Ra calls the one infinite creator. So he's infinite. The only thing infinite is creation and the one creator. So hence one infinite creator. Well, the energy that came to be from infinity, they call infinite energy. And here's one of those overlays of the truth. That's what we refer to as the Holy Spirit. So the creator is spirit as well. So he's infinite in power. He's infinite in spirit, in energy, the one infinite creator, infinite energy, and that energy he used to create light is what we call love. And that just makes it more powerful, if you ask me, because love truly is the most powerful thing in existence. Not just in the world, not just on this planet. Everywhere through the stars, anywhere there's any form of creation out of the dark, God created light. That light came from the energy source of the creator, the one infinite creator. That infinite energy source, that infinite creator is love. And that's just amazing. And it's all done by free will. He wanted to learn. It became aware. So it created. Its first thing it created was the photon. So the photon, if you look at it in this whole big picture, it's very similar to seed. So seeding the darkness. So he seeded the darkness with light. And the energy source is infinite, so it's unlimited. It's never ending. And so what has come from this creation? I mean, everything that we know of. So these raw beings, this raw group, I think they say they are over 6 million years old, something like that. And they come from Venus. That's where their third density lives. So there's different densities, and they kind of give an example of, an octave. Anybody's ever played the piano, you have your notes, you have your octave. You got your 7 different layers in each octave. It's been a long time since I played the piano, so I'm trying to recall elementary school days. But anyways, I remember middle C, and I can play one song still on the piano. That's it. But anyways, they compare this also to the rainbow. So you look at the colors of the rainbow, and the most amazing thing about the rainbow is it directly corresponds to the human body. And the most amazing thing that the rainbow symbolizes, it symbolizes evolution. It symbolizes growth. It symbolizes ascension, which is ironic and not surprising that, the rainbow has kind of been attacked, in recent years, and it symbolizes something different these days. But you look at the human body, and we know we have these energy centers. So it's described to us how our body is actually made, and what we can't see are these energy centers. And we know this through yoga and the text, Hindu texts and Sanskrit texts from India, that there really is something to these energy centers in our body. And I didn't quite understand all this. I mean, I knew there had to be something like it or something to it. But every time I asked somebody that was into yoga and kind of a new agey kind of stuff, I'd ask them about energy centers. And they all had like a different explanation for each energy center. So when I read through this raw material, the Law of One, the guy asking the questions, he did a great job. You could tell he was nervous, but he really wanted to know, and Ra was more than willing to tell him this information. And it pretty much essentially breaks down like this. Yes, we have 7 energy centers. 5 of them are actually like internal energy centers. 2 of them are doors. So you have the first one, and everything, any kind of, like, has anybody ever wondered like how their body gains energy when they sleep or rest? Like, I've always wondered this, like, where does this energy come from? And where is it stored? Is it stored in every cell in our body? Well, they ask these questions, and Ra tells them every bit of energy for our physical beings and organs, vital energy and physical energy, they refer to it as, it enters through our feet. And as we know, our bodies have electric wiring in them. They're called nerves. And our bones actually transmit energy very well. So all the energy, they call it the universal energy, which is the energy that comes from the Creator to our star. That energy goes from our star to our planet, and that planet puts off like electromagnetic energy and any energy it gets from the sun to help grow and bring forth the Earth's greatest potential. So all living things on Earth are absorbing this energy. Animals, plants, fish, us, you name it. It all enters through our feet and our tailbone. So it goes through our feet. Well, everything's connected by bone to our spine. And they say that these energy centers are actually in our spine. And this makes complete sense because any kind of electric system, like a house, you have a power source. A car, you have a power source, that's the battery. Well, where's that power held? It's held, like in a car, it's a battery. In our body, our battery is our spine. So these energy centers, this is where this energy is collected. At our tailbone, it's red. Then at the navel, it's orange. The diaphragm, it's yellow. And then center chest, where our heart is, it's green. And then right at the throat, it's blue. And above blue is indigo, and that's the pineal gland in our brain. And then the very top of that, above our head, is violet ray. Interesting thing about the red and the violet is they're kind of constants. Like, they're not really energy centers, but they are. The red is, by our level evolution, we are in third density. So red is like your most basic of instincts. So your survival instincts, like your animal instincts, every human has to survive. So that's red. So it's like a valve. It just lets it in. You don't really have to do anything to it. You just have to manage it. That's where anger comes from. People say they see red. They might actually be seeing red energy flowing up from their body, from the red energy center, because that's the most basic of instincts for the human being. Then you have orange, and orange is mostly associated with ego, and it can also be associated with creativity. But yellow, after that, is associated with power and control, so manipulation, things of that nature. And then green is the first step for a third density being, which is us, third dimension, third density. You make that transition to love. So the only way for this energy center to begin to crystallize and shine is learning love, understanding love, and making every choice based on love. And by love, I mean putting other people first before yourself. So the selfless form of love. You can also love yourself, but so in an individual that does not want to love others first and they want to love themselves first, they'll actually skip right over this. So someone like Hitler would be a good example, because the next step up is blue, and that's associated with wisdom. Hitler was a very smart individual, but he was not a very loving person. I think a lot of people might agree with that. So you can skip right over. But if and see, that's the whole purpose of our existence right now, is to learn how to go from that red, orange, yellow. We're all born with that. Those are always active. That's what gets our human nature. That's why as soon as we're born, everybody's like, yeah, human nature. That's, you lie, you cheat, you steal. That's, you have an ego. There's your orange energy coming through. There's you want to control and lie and manipulate. That's your yellow energy. And then you have anger issues. That's your red energy. And it's funny when you break it down. Every experience you have, that energy from that experience, talking to an individual, what you hear them saying to you, all that energy enters in through the red energy center first. And I think it's amazing because it makes complete sense. Everybody's so quick to anger when they're young. It really takes a long time to train yourself to not get so angry so easily, because anger comes from that red energy, which is the very first energy center that every experience goes through for every human. And then, you get mad, it rises up, then your ego starts to get puffed up. Well, your ego gets puffed up, then it goes to yellow, and then you want to dominate somehow, and your ego's been damaged, so you want to repair it. So you want to either beat someone up, or you want to manipulate someone to gain power over them, or to trick them, deceive them, pretty much stick it to them is what you're trying to do. But it makes complete sense. I mean, if you think about any time you've ever been mad, it always goes through those phases. It always anger, ego, manipulation, control, especially men versus females. How many fights do guys get in at the bar? I mean, they're so quick to anger. And especially if you've been drinking, that energy flows a little easier. So it really is up to us to consciously work on that and practice that. So the whole purpose of us being alive is to evolve to that fourth ray, which is green, which is love. And that's the whole reason for our existence. And Emmanuel tried to tell us that. He was talking about nothing but love. Love your neighbor as yourself. And that's great. I mean, I'd even take it a step further. Love your neighbor more than yourself. Like when you borrow something from a neighbor, give it back to him in better condition than you borrowed it from. Help people out when you don't feel like helping people out. These are the fruits of the Spirit. This is how you'll know that they are on your side, that you can trust them by the fruits of the Spirit. And it's laid out in plain text what that is. Love is peace, love is joy, it does not boast, it does not envy. It's so simple. Love your neighbor as yourself, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. In every choice that comes in our life, there is always a potential for both, to make a selfish decision and a selfless decision. So you can make it out of love for yourself, or you can make it out of love of someone else, or even as simple as what you perceive to be the right thing. In our society, what does righteousness mean? What does justice mean? If you have to come forward to authorities because you witnessed something, it takes a lot of bravery. You have a choice you can make. And the amazing thing about the freedom we've been given, it's not just free will. People in Christian religions are always talking about, I have free will. No one can make me do anything. God can't make me believe in him. God can't make me do this. God can't make me do that. Yeah, that's the world he's designed. That's how creation works. But there's also choice. And if you think they're the same thing, I challenge you to just think about it, contemplate that. Are they the same thing? Because there's always two choices you can make in every single situation. So that essentially is the reason for us being alive. There is no other reason for us being alive. It isn't to make a lot of money. It isn't to get caught up in material objects. And Emmanuel is very clear about that as well. But I think the church has kind of warped that perspective, and it's kind of distorted it, where all of a sudden you're an evil person because you're a wealthy person. So a lot of guilt has been put on people, and that shouldn't be the case. Everybody has to learn their own way. So the only way to grow in evolution from the red, orange, yellow to green, to learning how to love, is everybody has to experience life. Everybody has to experience life, and they have to make their own choices, and they have to learn from those choices. Whether it was a good decision or it was a bad decision, really, what do you learn more from? I think majority of people would say they learn more from making bad mistakes. So all this stuff that we've put on ourselves from either church or family or just society, saying that we should feel guilty for all these bad things that we've done. Absolutely not. That is not the case. You know why? Because we are all one in creation. We are all one in the one infinite creator, because he created everything, and we are part of that creation. And he loves every single part of his creation. He loves himself, and he shares that love with all his creatures and all his creations. And that's why, and he gives you free will to learn and evolve the exact same way he did. So he's learning through us. How old is the universe? It's so old. So think about how many experiences of how many beings have lived since his initial creation of light. And he's recording everything and learning from it. And the only thing close to perfect is the one infinite creator, because he's the one that has the collective knowledge of everything everybody's experienced. So we have to experience these things because we have to make choices. And the thing about, once you have an experience, once you have a choice made, then you have to learn. Well, if you're a slow learner, you're going to experience things over and over again until you do learn. But once you start to realize, man, maybe I should stop doing that, because that's having a negative side effect. Maybe I shouldn't do those drugs, or maybe I shouldn't treat people that way. Maybe I shouldn't take jobs like that anymore. Then you're learning, and it's improving your decision making in the future, and it's shaping you to eventually come back to love and how you're going to exercise that love, show that love, and grow in love. So what we really need to look at is forgiveness is huge. And not only is forgiveness of others huge, what's even bigger is forgiving ourselves. Because the church has always told us that we're one body, one body of Christ. But then they say, we're evil sinners, and we should feel guilty about that. Not only do you need to be ready to forgive others, but you have to start with forgiving yourself. So if you picture us all as one body of creation, just like in our bodies, if we have an infection going on, it's generating heat. It's your body's defenses are trying to fight it, and it could be as small as your toenail. You got like an ingrown toenail or something like that. It's just killing you, and you don't feel good. You're feeling sick. That's because you're fighting an infection. There is one tiny part of the whole body that is not able to forgive itself, and so it's putting itself down, and it's doing it all on its own. When the reality is, the Creator loves every last bit of his creation and has purposely made a world where people can make mistakes, because that's how they learn. And what he wants is us to learn. And the more we learn, the more knowledge we gain, then we can really start to evolve in either being hot or cold. So for me personally, I want to be hot as the sun, and as hot as I could possibly be, because love is light, and light generates heat, and I want to be as bright as possible. Someone that wants to go the other direction, they want to go in a negative direction, they have every right to. I don't have to agree with anything they do, and I don't have to put up with them hurting others around them, but I don't have to condemn them either. That's their choice. This world, this creation, even just around our star, we've been given the freedom to choose and make choices and learn from those choices, good or bad. So the more bad choices we make, the more learning we do. We start learning from them. We start improving on those choices, and then our choices become better and better and more positive and more positive the more we learn, and we learn from those mistakes. And that way, we are growing in love, and we are evolving. That is the next step. So Ra explains to us that every individual in this octave, this universe, this reality we call the universe, there's 7 densities within this octave, and they only know about this octave because that's all they've ever lived in. Well, he started first density, second density, and so on and so forth. You go up. So first density is like the amoeba, a single-celled organism, and then it becomes aware. And once it becomes aware, then it dies, then it moves on to second density, and it becomes conscious. So you have second density. Well, what Ra refers to as second density, we call trees, we call animals, and even some minerals. Says pretty rare, but even some minerals have been able to take on awareness of consciousness just by higher density beings being around them. Best example is animals. So how do animals move on to third density? And so we are third density. Human race is third density. Animals are helped by third density beings, like when we take them on as pets. We give them names. So as soon as you teach a puppy their name and they start coming to their name, you've just taught them awareness of self. So they are now self-aware, they are conscious, they're returning to their name. So when they die, they are able to go on to third density. And the third density is the most important, because this is the density of true spiritual growth. I'm not 100% sure when the spirit really comes in and is born. I do know it's as soon as you're born into third density. Your spirit, your being, is like what we know as computers. It's your hard drive. Your spirit is like your hard drive. It remembers everything. I believe Ra even talks about spirit is even present in second density beings, so trees and animals and some minerals. So like in areas like mountains where there's a lot of people and a lot of activity, and people actually talk to the mountains and people talk to the trees, this can actually cause trees to become aware, consciously aware. And you can tell by, how well the trees flourish, the squirrels in the trees, the birds in the trees. It's just such harmony because that's nature. That's how the creator designed everything to take place. And our presence can actually catapult this process where, if third density is not on this planet, if there's no humans on this planet, it would happen. It would just be a longer process. But we're catapulting it by our presence. And look what is catapulting us. Higher beings of higher densities are coming down to us and doing the same thing. They're trying to teach us, just like we teach dogs their names and some words, and so they can follow your commands. And you look at the growth of just love for pets in different countries and how it's not existent in other countries. And America is just amazing. Like, we love our pets, and people just, I love animals. I love every last bit, even the angry ones, even the scary ones. I love them. I don't want to hurt them. I still, like grizzly bears, sure, you got to defend yourself. You have a right to defend your own life. But yeah, it's amazing. Just natural cohesion of everything in the wild is amazing. So we're third density beings. We're striving to go to fourth density, but what makes third density so important, and it is described as the hardest part, the hardest phase of evolution, because before third density, it was just basic instincts and the earth providing for you. You have fur, your body digests things better than it does being human. Like dogs can eat raw meat, animals can eat raw meat and be just fine. So the earth provides everything, and their bodies provide everything as well. Third density is the challenge because now we have to use our brain. We have a higher form of consciousness. We have to problem solve. And we can talk, and we can use words. We can create we can create vibrations with our vocal cords, which is amazing because this whole universe is built off of vibration. Light is vibration. The photon vibrates and creates matter at different vibrations. So now we can vibrate. And that's why, the words we speak are so important, because it's vibrations. And there's weight behind that. And they even know this in the musical world. This is why the Germans changed 432 megahertz to 440. They said it changed the person's overall experience more towards a negative side. Anyways, that's a whole nother subject. So back to evolution of third density. Our whole purpose, another negative part, or a hard obstacle we have to endure in third density, is the clash of good and evil, what we see as good and bad. You have to coexist because you're not locked in. You don't know which way you're going to go, if you're going to be an evil person or a good person. And to not, try and drop some labels. Are you going to go a negative route, or are you going to go a positive route? And the thing is our creation is all built around that free will and freedom of choice. And this is what the creator is wanting. This is what he's wanting to create. This is what these higher beings are farming us for. They want us to make that cornerstone decision, and which is amazing that Emmanuel used that term for himself and was prophesied from the Old Testament as he would be the cornerstone. The stone that the masons threw away would become the cornerstone. It's amazing. So we have to make that choice to go one way or the other. But once we go that way, we stick on that path, and they want us to continue on that path, to continue to grow and to grow our spirit. And spirit is the whole key. And learning the ways of love and exercising love and making every decision based off of love, either of yourself or selflessness, others first, that is the whole purpose of our life. There is nothing else to this life except for that. Everything else is like catalyst and things put around us to create those circumstances, that environment, to create decisions. And it's amazing how Ra describes a future after that. So, the book of Revelation describes the harvest, and they say they're here for the harvest as well. So what that entails is we are harvested, and we are all tested to see how far down the tunnel of light we can go before it's too intense, and that's how we're measured on fourth density. So you go fourth density positive or you go fourth density negative. And once that decision is made, once fourth density is established, then it's like a slightly easier path, like, because we've gone through so much turmoil and pain and agony in third density, and people ask, well, a loving God wouldn't do this. Well, what they found, these farmers, these beings found, is that when you take away some things from a human, like their knowledge of past lives and stuff like that, having a fresh start every time they're born, you make them feel more pain than other humans in the past. You create more pain. Well, when you do that, you actually create people seeking a creator more, and that's what has to happen. The law of one is all about the one infinite creator, believing in him and knowing that he is love. He created all things, and the whole purpose of our existence in third density is to make that decision and to choose and seek out love and the one infinite creator. Emmanuel goes in this in depth in all of the New Testament, even in the Gospels that are slightly skewed. So when you read the Talmud of Jmmanuel and you read the Law of One books with the raw material, they're saying the exact same thing. It's so amazing. So, we'll pick up next time. I think I'm at an hour here. Pick up where we left off. Next time is about the Creator, the one infinite Creator, and its energy we call the Holy Spirit. Ra refers to it as infinite energy. And then we talk about the Talmud of Jmmanuel, where Emmanuel actually told his disciples, he called them fools. You think God and creation are the exact same thing. They are not. I'm here to tell you that the one you call God, that created 3 human races on this planet, is not the creator. And that's going to hurt some people. That's going to hurt some people really bad. But we have to look at this stuff, because we have to grow. We have to put our biases aside. We have to put our feelings aside, and we have to listen to this stuff, and we have to mull it over in our minds objectively. So he tells his disciples, God, the one we call God, is of a higher consciousness we can't even comprehend. But he says, even the one we call God, that created 3 human races on this planet, gives even higher respect and reverence to creation itself. So even the one we call God was created by the Creator. So, and that's really what we're searching for. That's really what I've always been searching for, is who is God? Like, who is the beginning? Who is the infinite? Like, we just keep saying God, but what does God even mean? Here's another one. What does sin even mean? Can anybody tell me a definition of sin? and by definition, I mean, okay, yeah, that sounds really good. Not, all right, you told me like 5 different definitions, and they all sound pretty cheesy. Like, give me a solid definition of what sin is, and give me a solid definition of what God means. Like, what is the definition of God? And the amazing thing is Emmanuel says exactly what God means, why we call God God. And he is not the creator. And he gives holy reverence to creation itself as being a higher power and the only power. So next time we'll touch on that. But, I'm not the smartest man in the world by any means. This is just what I am learning. And, I love the people on this planet. I've grown up Christian communities, and I love the community. They're, it's great, but the whole rest of our society is great as well. And I've never felt like I've fit into that box, and I've always liked the Christian community, but I've also felt like they kept themselves too closed off from the rest of society. Like, how big can it go? Like, I love my community. I want them to know the truth. I wanted to know the truth. I want my people in my whole state to know the truth. I want people in my whole country to know the truth. And that's why I think, America is really bonded over patriotism and how our country was formed. And not just us, this great awakening is affecting people globally. You have people in Japan flying the American flag. You have people in Great Britain saying President Trump is my president too. World patriots. I mean, world patriotism. It's amazing. And what we all share in common is we all want the truth. And I want everybody to have the truth. And so if I can do my little part in helping people learn a little more of the truth, then I'll be happy. But anyways, this is Insignificant Man signing off. Until next time. Everybody have a good one.